So actually, while Armenia's out looking for her, let me introduce myself. I'm Julie Quinn. I'm the office managing partner for Deloitte Consulting here in Sacramento, and I specialize in human capital management for government. I've worked in, I think, a sum total of 8 different states, but my main focus is here in Sacramento, so I can be home, which is nice. Hello. But I wanted to learn a little bit about you, so I'm going to ask a few demographic questions just to see what perspectives we have in the room. So how many of you would call yourselves an IT professional? Raise them up, raise them high, raise them proud. Okay. How many of you would call yourself a business or program person? All right. Do it with pride. Put it out there. We may need to move some folks around so we get some integration here. So just a handful of business folks. What about anybody here from procurement? All right. Procurement. How many of you used to be IT folks and are now business folks? Anybody? How about the opposite? How many of you are, what did I say? Business folks who used to be in IT? No, the other way. How many of you are in IT who used to be business folks? Okay, good. So that's helpful. And who's both? All right. Who's confused? Anybody here a change management person at your organization? Terrific. All right. Who hasn't raised their hand, and what category did I forget? No? Oh, our friend in the back. Anybody in audio visual? There he is. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrea to kick it off, or should I just keep going? All right. Change management is important. That's what she wanted to say. Right?
That's right.
Exactly. Okay. Let's move forward here. Why is this not working? Because it's not turned on?
Turn it on.
Got it. Thanks. There we go. All right, so we're going to do introductions with the rest of the panel. Bill, you want to just take a second to introduce yourself?
Sure. Bill Otterbeck, Assistant Deputy Director, Camus Division, Department of Healthcare Services. I run the fee-for-service fiscal intermediary.
Okay. Kenny?
Kenny Moore, California Department of Public Health, Project Management Officer. Thank you, Marie.
Oh, you got a little contest. He's your boss. Good move.
Kenny gets all the love.
Anybody here from DHCS? Wants to clap for Bill? He's your boss. Okay. I see how this is. So, Andrea.
Hi, Chief Deputy Director, Department of Technology on Policy, and I only stood because this podium hides me.
All right, and then the other person who's part of our team, Brian Lee, he's from Delegata. He provided the instruction for the morning session, but he had to leave to go to a client meeting, so he apologizes for not being here, but he did contribute to the content we're going to talk about today. So here's the agenda. It's going to be fun, it's going to be interactive, and hopefully you're going to learn a lot. If not, we're going to reinforce things you already know, and that's valuable as well. So we're going to talk first about building the case for change. This morning we talked a little bit about what change management means. We're going to take that a step further and talk about how do you build the case for why you need to change so that you can share that with others. Create that justification. Then we're going to do what's called an elevator pitch. Does anybody know what I mean by an elevator pitch? What? Quick? Persuasive? Yep, okay. So we're going to do a fun activity, so get ready. Then we'll talk about how to deliver OCM successfully. There's many different methods and tools that are out there. We're going to talk about a few of them, get some of your feedback as well, maybe some of the experiences that you've had, and share a little bit about the how of doing OCM on a project or as part of an initiative. Then we'll share some stories ourselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about the toolbox and toolkit that you'll leave with. Okay? All right. So the next section we're going to talk about is really how OCM is important to a project. Now, most of the time we think about a project, we think about a technology project. How many of you have been on a technology project? Okay. How many of you have had a technology project happen to you? Right? How many of you have been through a regulatory change or a big business process change? Okay, so those are all examples of change. Change is hard, but change is about getting from where you are now to where you need to be and building acceptance along the way. Why is that acceptance important? You want it to be used. You want that new change, whether it's a new process or a new piece of technology, you want it to be used. Why else?
If people don't accept it, they'll make sure that it fails.
People don't accept it, they'll make sure it fails. That's never happened, right?
Increases quality.
Increases quality. Yes.
Software and IT are tools, and tools can be used well or poorly.
Okay. Software and IT are tools. They can be used well or poorly. Go ahead.
I think it's morale too. because
Morale?
Morale has a lot to do with the quality of the end product, which is what everything is geared to.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment about morale and the importance of morale on a project or the success of an initiative?
Really important on long-term projects.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Really important on long-term
Why is it important on long-term projects in particular?
Well, when you work on a project that's like 3 years or 5 years, you got to keep the momentum, keep the staff engaged, or else they end up looking for another job.
Exactly. So I don't know if you heard what he was saying, but on long projects, 3-5-year projects, they can either be a death march or they can be a fun march to a great success. And to keep folks engaged along the way is really important, not only to the end users, making sure people who aren't on the project know what's going on, but also for the project team, right? There's fatigue when you're on these long projects that it's important to make sure you're managing that morale as well. So good. Great. All right. So let me move to this next one. So what are some of the reasons why we implement changes, whether it's a process change or a technology change? There's a couple of examples here, but what have been your experiences?
Legislation.
Legislation?
Mandates.
Say again?
Mandates.
Mandates, okay.
Needs change.
Needs change. A little bit more about what that means.
The society evolves, people's expectations of what can be done for them through automation increases.
Okay.
Expectations. Government regulation requires more attention to specific details.
Okay, so customer expectations will change? Sure. What else?
Technology.
Technology changes?
A need for more efficiency.
A need for more efficiency. Exactly. What does that mean?
Errors in production sometimes.
Errors?
Do more with less.
Do more with less. I'm sure we've never heard that, right? We all work with government. You guys are all on the front lines of that, and we work with a lot of clients who are dealing with that challenge to do more with less. Absolutely. Any other reasons why there might be a change?
Consolidation.
Consolidation?
You can have a system that's just at end of life or has totally died.
Right. The technology is just worn out. It's not supported anymore. Yeah, it's not working right. It's, buggy, etc. Okay. Yes.
Risks can become more apparent. For example, natural disasters might increase the need for services that have been neglected.
Okay. Good. What about the changing workforce? What about the desire / need to do things maybe virtually than you used to, and they having the tools in order to do that? Okay, great. Oh, don't look at that. It's a surprise. So, think back in your mind. Has anybody ever been part of a project that maybe didn't go so well? Just a few of you? That's awesome. That means we have so much success in the room. Terrific. All right, for those of you who've heard of projects that haven't gone well, and maybe those of you who've experienced, you've heard of one or two of those?
No, I'm teasing.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, we can talk about the definition of failure some other time at the bar, I guess. But there's different definitions for sure of that. But why do you think projects fail? What's the number one reason projects fail?
Lack of communication.
Lack of communication. Anybody else have any other guesses?
Poorly defined requirements. Our slogan was, it's just what we asked for, but not what we want.
Yes. Has anybody felt that or heard that before? Yeah.
I was going to say change in scope.
Change in
Started
scope?
with, ended up growing to be a lot bigger.
Okay, go ahead.
Unrealistic expectations,
Of whom? By whom?
whoever's idea it was.
So the person who identified the need for the project has unrealistic expectations? Yes.
They have a roll out date to meet regardless.
Okay, yeah, the date drives everything, come hell or high water. Yep.
Customers who are inexperienced and not dedicated to the project.
Okay. So if you think about all the reasons why a project might fail, so there's people reasons, process reasons, technology reasons, strategy reasons. If you had to think about the percentage of the reasons projects fail is in the people category, what would you think that is?
Poor management. Turnover?
No, what the number, the percentage. How big of a percentage of the reasons projects fail are the people issues?
80.
80, 60, 70, 40. What'd you say? 50? I thought you were going to say 100%. No, exactly. All right, well, we did a study, and this study was back in 2008, and it was a study of chief information officers who had implemented what's called ERP systems, so enterprise resource planning systems, big finance or HR solutions. Over 60% of the reasons their projects failed were people-related issues. Lack of executive sponsorship, and the biggest one being the inability to manage change effectively. Any surprises with that? Doesn't sound like it. You guys got the number pretty good. Do you think it's changed since 2008? No? It's probably gotten worse. That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, because people's expectations are only increased as technology and the availability of services and the expectations for services have increased just by our culture change, right? In our lives and in our country and in the technology world. All right, so why are there people issues? What's the root cause? Give me some examples of what's really going on.
Change is difficult for most people.
Why is change difficult for most people?
Most people are partially creatures of habit. They do well what they are familiar with and comfortable with.
Okay, what else? Fear. Talk to me about fear.
A lot of people are afraid that a system is going to displace them, going to take away their job. Or I've even found when you talk to people as you're trying to chart their decision process, they don't know. They don't know why they do what they do. And they're afraid of that. I mean, and it shows where they might be lacking in some skills. So there are a lot of fear.
Yeah, fear's a big issue for sure. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on? Yes, go ahead.
I think also if the people were not on board from the beginning to determine what the requirements were, it would be more difficult for them to adjust to the system. It's like they were suddenly outsiders being brought in. But if they were insiders to begin with, it wouldn't.
Okay, so for folks who may not have been involved in why we're doing the project, it may be tough for them to buy in easily because they may not understand the reasons for it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today is how you can help spread that word. Yes, go ahead.
I worked on a system in the state of Florida, not here. And one of the managers who was very high up on the system went around saying that this system was going to be so wonderful even a monkey could operate it.
Ooh.
So when it was implemented and the system was not working properly, the users just said, well, I guess the monkeys didn't program it correctly. They wouldn't record the payment errors or the calculation errors or anything else because, you know, they just felt that they were so devalued by those comments that even a monkey could operate it.
Right.
And I gotta say, you know, I didn't blame them. I thought, why in the world would you say that? You just totally devalued your customer.
That's a tough one, right? You can't come back from that. Any other reasons why? Yes.
Your last line there says organizational culture. If your organization has silos around each group and now you come up with a big project that involves all of them, communication is not going to be so easy between them. So each of them are going to say, I got my little piece that I'm going to do and I don't care what they do or if they fail or not. They don't see the big picture.
That's right. Do you ever have to deal with organizational silos? State government. Well, I think it's any large organization, right? Yeah. You know, in Deloitte we have silos. The technology people don't understand what the human capital people do or what the strategy and operations people do, and they do our work, we do their work, and everybody gets mad. You know, that happens too. So that's natural behavior that happens in large organizations. How do you combat that? How do you turn that around? Participation.
Starts from the top.
Starts from the top. So executive sponsorship, how important is that? How challenging is that in a state environment in terms of consistency at the top layers of your organization? It's a never-ending battle. Okay. Have you guys seen challenges with that?
Yeah, I don't think that they really recognize what it takes to be an effective sponsor, because they already have a job that's, you know, usually fairly challenging anyway. And then when a large technology project comes along, that's just a whole nother level.
Right.
And it's very hard to prioritize that work.
Well, think about it when they come in and a project's already underway,
Right.
right? And they're like, why are we doing this? Somebody explain it to me.
I was going to say, generally because your executive sponsorship starts out with the person saying, we can do it now, what do you want us to do? You know, and they didn't bring in anybody, so you already have a huge hurdle there yet to come in. People now go, well, hold it, why didn't you talk to somebody before we started this?
Help manage those expectations, right? Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an exercise. So for those of you who've been on a project, which I think is pretty much everybody here in one way or another, I want you to think about at your table and talk a little bit amongst yourselves. How was the vision of that project, of an example project, communicated to you? How was it done in a way that was good or maybe not so good? So what did you observe in that? Did it feel like a good message, or was it confusing, or whatever the case may be? And then what do you think the reasons were that you felt that way? Was it because you didn't have enough information, because you didn't believe what they were saying, you didn't have trust in leadership, etc.? So does that make sense? I want you guys to talk at your table, and we're going to share some feedback in just a few minutes, okay? And you guys, I don't know if you can talk amongst yourselves for sure, but you're welcome to join up with this table if you'd like.
Well, one thing I can contribute is two things came to mind. One was most of the communication but also the communication is inconsistent. It wasn't always the same way. Sometimes it was giving a presentation to everybody in the project team on a risk event like project failure. But most of the time it basically came through the manager.
Oh no, you're right there.
You said inconsistent, where there was a big, this is when I was with the banking, doing a change in accounting system. Big corporate meeting, they're supposed to deliver it past all over West Coast, East Coast. And then 18 months went by before you heard about it again. Before the people that were out using the system never heard anything more about it. So by that time, most of the people that heard about the project originally, that were going to be the end users, were caught up and moved up and moved out elsewhere. And you have people that were affected by it, or being hit blindsided almost. And then for training all of a sudden. So it's just a lack sometimes of continuing the message.
I think one of the challenges that I find is that our primary business customer has several stakeholders that they report to, other state entities, and they work, they'll implement a change, and human resource or pension-related change, and you're working with CalPERS or CalSTRS, and CalHR, the Department of Finance.
All right, let's go for 2 more minutes, and then we're going to report back out, okay?
Objectives and things that they want, and what you find is that they don't always agree on what needs to be done, and sometimes you find that out later down the line. We're providing service, but we're not meeting with the external stakeholders, we're just meeting with our internal business division. And sometimes as you get down the road, that's really hard, things get lost in the translation. Or by the time our business division talks to them about what they really plan to do, the other customers going, hey, what do you mean? It's not going to do this, this, or this. And so trying to find a way to, the appropriate place for us to be at the table for those conversations.
All right, let's come back together if we could. And given our timing, we probably have time to share 1 or 2 stories. So which table wants to volunteer? What did you learn in that discussion? What were some of the ahas that came out? I'll just pick a table. I'm sorry, what? No ahas yet? Okay. The ahas will build as we go. And then it'll be ah at the end. Okay, yes.
Multiple perspectives, whether it be inconsistent communication or conflicting demands from different stakeholder organizations.
Okay, great. Anybody else want to share? What about back there?
We had a positive with consistent message and consistent delivery methods, just face-to-face, whether it be meetings that were held within our central office, as well as roadshows that went around to the various field offices.
Great. Anybody else want to share? Yes.
We're talking of different projects that when you have your milestones, if you have too many requirements, so if you want to meet, 10 items, from the beginning you're not going to meet them. Split it up in smaller milestones with a few items that you want to meet, so your target is not so broad and you're able to meet it along the way.
Great. Okay. Were there any surprises that came out? Anything that you heard from one of your colleagues that shocked you or was unusual that you're willing to share? No? Same old, everybody's consistent? All right. Oh, where's my clicker? Gotta have the clicker. All right, so one of the things we talked about, we were preparing for this session, was how do we put organizational change management into context of a project in state government? And we broke it out into 4 different buckets. And I want to have a facilitated discussion around how organizational change management can be thought of and incorporated in each of those 4 stages of a project. The first stage being project planning and feasibility study report. Has anybody here been a part of project planning or feasibility study writing? Raise them high, let's see them. Great, so several of you. So how can organizational change management be a factor at this stage of an initiative? Is it important at this stage or not? Yes? Okay, so why is it important? Go ahead.
That's when you first start gathering the information from hopefully your users, your customers, that what do they need, and potentially what is coming, and start getting their buy-in.
Okay.
So you can start building enthusiasm, you can start collecting what concerns might be there, and start seeing where you need to focus some attention to combat any fears, to look at potential training needs, to look at where organizations may need to be shifted a bit.
Okay.
So it's a really good time to start planning for the future in a lot of different areas.
Okay, good. Other thoughts? You were going to say something. I know you were.
Actually, she said a lot of
She said it already? Okay. What else? Anything else? Yes.
Change management is a new concept for a lot of people. And the earlier you start talking about it and sort of getting the terminology and the just dibbling out maybe some of the values, then you get those really positive aha moments later down and go, oh, that's what you were talking about in change management.
Right.
Because they've heard it early on that you want to make it part of it, and it's more accepted.
Good. Okay, good. Good feedback. Yes.
The other thing about it is too, is project planning is just that. It's a plan. It's a working document, so it's subject to change, which is really what change management is about. It's managing the deviations that you have to go, as opposed to being put into place and you deviate from the plan. Oh my God, we screwed up. No, you haven't screwed up. You just have to adjust.
Right. And I would add to that this stage of the process, the idea of what's going to change is pretty ambiguous still, right? It's the idea. Somebody had an idea. We're not sure where they had the idea, where they had a conference and they saw something cool and they came back and we got to do that. Or did it come up from the field? We need a solution to help us be more efficient at blah, 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 whatever that is. But it's not always clear at this point in time what that looks like, right? So the ambiguity is tough as well in terms of trying to explain and articulate it to folks. Yes?
Funding. We start to identify for this project and get the executive sponsorship.
Absolutely. Very important to the success of it, for sure. All right, let's move on to the next one. So the next one is really getting a little bit more detailed. You get your requirements pulled together. You go through the processes that you need to go through for a procurement, whether it's to buy software or hire a systems integrator or a training lead or whatever it might be. So when you're in this part of the process, is organizational change management important?
Yes.
Why?
Where's your resources?
See, this is where you can start to plan for the resources that you're going to need to do and focus on organizational change management. Okay, good. What else?
Yeah, one of the things that happens at this stage is business process reengineering. So that's that's only gonna happen if we're preparing people for that to happen, you know.
Right.
Things are gonna get shaken up here.
So does the business process reengineering happen here? Or does the business process definition happen here?
Well, a lot of times when you're gathering,
Maybe it should start.
yeah, when you're gathering requirements, you're gathering requirements that are gonna be for the new landscape. So the business process reengineering actually starts here.
I agree, it should, for sure. But let's talk about how easy or hard is it to get folks to think about what different business processes they need to be thinking about now?
Very hard.
Very hard. Why is that hard?
Just it's not broke. It's not visual.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. I'm sure you've heard that a few times.
It's not real tangible.
It's not tangible.
I think some legislation or something that says do blah, 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 but they don't have a clue how they're gonna get there.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
think it's easier when you have a directive, like a new rule or a mandate. But when you're really doing something to increase efficiency or, you know, transform a business process, anyway, that's been my experience. It's much harder to get them to see what the future is for the people that are doing that work, because they, I think, are afraid that their work is going to go away. And not everybody. Some people are maybe. I think it's what we're seeing is a difference now with the different types of folks we have in the workforce, with millennials and people that have been doing, you know, a lot of
They get
people
excited
now are
to do
used
something
to
different?
things transforming all the time. They talked about it at the luncheon, you know, and I think that's very challenging from a organizational change management, is understanding how to talk with each of those groups, because I think one just naturally is able to think about how it's going to change because everything in their world is changing, you know, every 6 months.
Right, so those are different.
Already, yeah.
Those are different perspectives that you have to keep in mind when thinking about it. Sure. Anything else about change management at this phase of the project or the initiative? Yes.
Well, you mentioned system integrators. Everything fits within a greater context, whether it's the business or the state at large. So you've got to consider broad needs rather than just the specific needs of the immediate project.
Yeah, and there's different components to the project, right? There's the thing you're going to implement or change. Then there's the IV&V folks and the project management folks and the training team and the change management team. And then there's everybody else doing their day job, keeping, you know, operations going. There's a lot of different pieces to think about. Yes.
I think one of the things you also need to be doing is explaining how all of those things fit together, so people won't be saying, what are they doing in my space?
Right. Were you going to say something? Yes.
I was just going to say that when you're gathering requirements, I think it's a great opportunity to set the tone of we're doing this together, not to you. So.
Great. Good feedback. All right, so then we've launched the project. We're all excited. We have the kickoff party. We got t-shirts. We have mugs. We have all, you know, we have a sign on the door that says we're the project team, and everybody's excited. Then about 10 days later, the work starts, and everybody's like, "Wah!" All right, so project launch and system design. So this is really where the rubber's hitting the road. Now it's not just conceptual. We've got a product, or we've got the new processes that we're going to go try to implement, and folks start to see the details. And then what happens? What? Chaos, panic, fear. Oh, it's really going to change. They're going to move my cheese. You know, that's going to happen. It's real. So why is change management super important at this point? Were you going to say something? No? Okay. Do you want to say something? Go ahead.
I think that becomes a time when people start wondering if they have the skills to go through with this project. If they can perform the roles and meet the responsibilities that are assigned to them. So I think sometimes there's a little fear in that. I also know that sometimes they're really busy carving their own little niche, survival niche.
Sure.
And I know on one team, we had 6 people sharing a tiny little office for 2 years, and we could push each other's buttons from across the room.
Well, more stories for the bar. We can go listen to for sure. But what else? I mean, so this is also a point in time where you might see retirements, right? You might see people who say, or transfers out. I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to do that. Or you might see folks creating processes on the side, right? Still doing things the old way. I can figure out how to make my clipboard work and my Excel spreadsheet work. Were you going to say something?
The two things, there's the workarounds, that's
Uh-huh.
when they start to rear their head. But also the naysayers, that's when they get their ammunition, because any
Right.
bug can
Ugh.
give them a big.
It's awful. It'll never work. It's terrible. Yeah. You guys ever heard those things?
It's been a plan before, now you actually have to put it in action.
Right.
Maybe it didn't work as well.
Right,
as you
and,
thought it
and it may not go smoothly, right? Yeah. Yes.
Bigger projects a lot of times on the scale where you start bringing in contractors, sorry. since you're
That's
from
okay.
Illinois. A lot of state employees.
I've been doing
feel-
this for over 20 years. I can handle just about anything.
A lot of state employees feel like they're being pushed over to the side and they're not good enough. And
Yep.
if you team up state employees with the contractors and they work side by side, knowledge transfer, it helps. So when you get to the end, you also have that knowledge and the documentation.
Yeah, the importance of teaming with the outsiders, for sure. You know, and from a vendor perspective, you know, I hate being called a vendor. I like being called a business partner because we're there to help you succeed. You know, our success is your success. My success is not dumping something on you and making you mad and making you miserable, right? My success is helping you get the advantage of what you're trying to do. And so whenever we have that shared vision, we can work together very, very effectively. But it's not always easy, for sure. All right, let's go to the last one. That's implementation. So does the change management problems stop when we go live? In fact, it just gets even more fun, right? Yeah? Why is change management important at this point?
Now we're affecting production, all the users or the customers.
It's real.
It's real, so it's affecting many, many more people.
Absolutely.
Maybe the public,
And does it go smoothly?
no.
Not always, right?
And if you're just now getting started with change management, you're about to get fried.
Yeah, if you're just starting to think about, oh, what's this change management thing? Let's get started with that. Yeah, then you're in trouble. I agree.
But often that's when it starts, is right there.
Isn't that, yeah, it's a shame, right? Any other thoughts on the importance of change management at this phase? All right, well, here's how they all come together, and you have this slide in your book. I won't belabor it, but the importance of thinking about how change management can be thought about and incorporated at each phase of a project or initiative is really important. And why it's important is because if someone has forgotten about the importance, you have an opportunity to help change that. So we're going to do a fun exercise, as I mentioned. We're going to do the elevator pitch. What do we say? Something short, persuasive, right? So we're going to mix it up a little bit. You have little cards on your table. Someone hold it up. There you go. Hold it up. You have cards. And on those cards, you have each of the 4 phases. So at your table, pick one that you're going to work on as a team. And then I want you to think about a scenario. So are you getting into an elevator with the director of your department? Are you getting in the elevator with the project manager? Are you getting in the elevator with the business owner, right? The deputy director over the program, or branch chief, or whatever it might be. I want you at your table to think about who your audience might be. Okay? Then I want you to come up with the elevator pitch about why OCM is important at whatever phase of the, whatever card you picked, as it relates to how that person might think. Does that make sense? So if it's in the FSR phase, and you're gonna go, you happen to be in the elevator with Secretary Dooley of Health and Human Services, and she wants to talk about projects and change management on the ride down, what are you gonna say? What's important about change management? Why is it important? Why should she care? Okay, the instructions clear? Yes.
Do you want one card per table or one card per person?
One card per table, I think, will keep it easier. You can do it one per person if you want. Talk amongst yourselves, whatever makes the most sense. I think just in the interest of time, we have about 15 minutes for the exercise, and we want to share again the outcomes. Okay?